Here's why Texas won't be back in 2022. It's kind of a doozy. I got like three pages of notes rather. Um, that's a great start. Let's keep rolling anyway. So, for a quick recap, let's say you are a Texas fan. You've been in a coma for the past, I don't know, a few months since like last August. So, about a year, a little over a year, under a year, whatever. Here's what happened. Your team went 5-7 under first-year head coach Steve Sarkisian. You missed a bowl game. Also, you didn't have a single player drafted. Okay, your little brother Texas Tech's basketball team has put more players in the NFL than Texas's football team at this point. It's 1-0 if you're keeping track at home. Marcus Santos Silva signed by the Cleveland Browns playing tight end. You lost to Kansas at home. And then also you just had a school record, 6 straight losses. So that's a recap of the 2021 year. Why did this happen? I think the reason why Texas is just such a dumpster fire right now, a lot of the fans will say, oh, well, we're lacking key talent, or lacking talent at key positions. We don't have a quarterback. We don't have guys on defense. We don't have consistent players, and we just don't have talent. That's what I hear a lot of Texas people saying. We don't have talent. We don't have talent. Well, let's go back and look at your recruiting. We'll go back to Tom Herman. It's like 4 years. It's a whole. We'll cut the COVID year, but let's say it's 4 years. Tom Herman. Okay, 2007. You take 17 players out of high school. It's the year Tom Herman's hired. You get your 25th in recruiting. Pretty down for Texas, but you do have 17 bodies you add. 2018, you add 27 players. 27 players to the roster. According to 24/7 Sports, I know you've only got 25 scholarships. I don't know if that means you got 2 walk-ons or what, but according to this, 27 players, third-ranked recruiting class. Okay, moving on up, much better. 2019, you take 26 players, third-ranked recruiting class. So hey, that's another top 3 back-to-back. Then 2020, you take 20 players, you rank 9th, and that's Tom Herman's last season. So Texas does not lack talent. The reality is you do not develop talent. You can't have back-to-back top 5 recruiting classes and then top 10 like 3 years in a row without you can't. No one's just that wrong on like 70 kids. It's not fathomable. There's no way. So Texas has talent. You're not retaining it. You're definitely not developing it, as evidenced by what's happened in the NFL draft this past year. The lack of draft picks, 0. So then we go to Sark, first year. 2021, he's a first-year head coach coming in. You take 23 kids, ranked 15th. That's still pretty good. That's good for not great for Texas, but it's maybe 10 programs would complain about a 15th ranked recruiting class. So that's fine. This year, 5th. Okay, so you don't lack talent. There's just no development going on in Austin. For whatever reason, kids are showing up. Their high school, they were a stud their whole life, stud in high school, best player on the field. Every single year, they all get to Texas. They all get to Austin. It's the same thing, or it's just the same story for everyone. So now you go from being, I'm the best player, now you're just another guy. And then for whatever reason, the coaching staffs weren't developing those players. They weren't training them up, so they don't really get much better. Maybe they put on some weight in the weight room. They grow a bit, but it's clear they're not developing. So I've been going on about 4 minutes now on this. Let's look at your 2022 outlook. Okay, so according to Kevin Borba of USA Today, the 2022 Texas team is returning about 68% of its total production. It's best for 53rd in the country. Your offense only returning 62% of your production. That's number 77 in the country. Your defense, you're returning 74% of your production. That's number 37 in the country. However, this is a defense that gave up on average over 200 rushing yards a game. So that's not very good. And also, when you look at it, this is the production returning from a 5-7 team. It's not a good team. Objectively, it's a bad team. So let's look at your losses from 2021, because a lot of teams, or a lot of players, a lot of fans, everyone really, they're just talking about, well, Texas, the offense, the quarterback situation. But what really let you guys down was the defense. The defense screwed you guys all season, and I'm going to prove it to you. Let's look at your first loss from 2021. It came against Arkansas. Now, before the game, if I told you, hey, look, KJ Jefferson, the Arkansas quarterback, he's going to be 14 of 19, 138 yards, no touchdowns, and an interception. Sounds pretty good. Most people would be like, okay, we're probably winning this game. We're Texas. They didn't pass it on us. Their quarterback didn't score a touchdown through the air or on the ground. So yeah, we're probably good, right? No, you guys got freaking skull dragged in Fayetteville. Just absolutely dominated. It was 33-7 at the end of the third quarter. And then, you guys scored 14 points in garbage time, and Arkansas still scored a touchdown in garbage time. They ran for 330 yards. Yeah, it was just not a good game. Not a good game at all. You guys got skull dragged. That was the defense. I mean, yes, the offense couldn't do too much to begin, but also it doesn't help. It doesn't help your offense get into a rhythm when every single time the other team's touching the ball, they're just running it down your throat constantly. I'm a Texas Tech fan, okay? I've endured the Kingsbury years. I know all about having an elite offense and not playing defense, especially not run defense. All right, next, you go on to Oklahoma. You pile up 516 yards on the ground. That's a lot better than Arkansas, where you got 200 something. So your offense showed up. You guys were up 35-20 at halftime. We all know what happens. Unfortunately, Oklahoma outscores you 35-10 in the second half. They outrushed you by over 200 yards. You gave up 340 on the ground, 660 total, 25 points in the fourth quarter. Epic collapse. The time of possession for that game was 35-25 in favor of OU. So that five minutes of difference. Defense was just out there too long. They were gassed, and they got gashed in the end. Literally gashed to lose the game. So then you look at the next game. Oklahoma State. I believe that's the next game, actually. Maybe it's the next game you played, maybe not. But you guys played Oklahoma State. You lost the fourth quarter 16-0, and that was the game, basically. The second half, Texas scored a touchdown, and then Oklahoma State just outscored you guys 19-0 the rest of the way. You gave up 220 rushing again. Not a great offensive day, but Oklahoma just kind of ground you guys down in the second half. And it's kind of another theme, and once again, second loss. 2 losses out of 3 now. You've had a 10-point lead at least. You had an 11-point lead, 24-13, and you don't score again. End up losing. Next, you have Baylor. So you in the fourth quarter, you lost 14-3. Just the fourth quarter, that span of 15 minutes. Gave up 230 on the ground. That's a discrepancy of 130 rushing yards. So once again, Baylor just kind of eating you guys up on the line. You did rush for 175 yards. So that's good. Or Baylor did. But yeah, you guys just kind of got ground down by Baylor in the end. So, it is what it is. Once again, you were up by at least 10 points. There's a point in that game where you were up by at least 10, and you guys screwed the pooch. So that's what happened with Baylor. Loss number 5, Iowa State. You guys were actually ahead 7-3 going into halftime, and then 27-0 run for Iowa State. Gave up 475 yards, which with Texas's defense this past year wasn't horrible. The problem is there's a discrepancy of 270 yards, and like I said, you were blanked the entire second half. Kansas, we all know how Kansas happened. You were down 21 at the half. You gave up 220 rushing yards to Kansas. I think the reason why Kansas won this game is solely based on the fact that they had exactly 420 yards of total offense. I think if they had one more or less, they would have lost. But they hit that magic number, the meme magic. Jared Casey in the back of the end zone getting his Applebee's NIL deal. And once again, this was a game where the time of possession was 35-25 in favor of Kansas. So Texas spent way too much time with its defense out on the field, and you lost the turnover battle 4-0. So Kansas didn't turn the ball over. Texas turns it over 4 times, and that's still just barely enough for Kansas to beat you. And then finally, last loss of the season comes to West Virginia. Jarrett Doege, much maligned West Virginia quarterback, has the game of his life. Throws for 290, 3 touchdowns, didn't turn the ball over. Texas turns it over 1 time. And the main reason why Texas lost this game, even though West Virginia didn't ground you guys out on the ground, they didn't, they didn't crockpot you guys like you're kind of been used to, especially against teams like Iowa State, Baylor, Oklahoma State. Your defense was out there for almost 39 minutes. So, when your offense isn't even when your defense is out on the field for about 66% of the game. Once again, even though it's not a great offense in West Virginia, Jarrett Doege, not the greatest quarterback. He's transferred, he's moved on, and he's not, it's his senior year. It's just not good. Not a recipe for winning. So that's my first page of notes. Hopefully the rest of this will go a little bit faster. So that's kind of a game-by-game breakdown. So in summation, you got 3 games with a blown 10-point lead. Every loss, I think, except for Arkansas and Iowa State, squarely on the shoulders of the defense. I think your offense obviously could have helped you against Arkansas. I think with the Arkansas game, offense and defense pretty evenly at fault. Defense couldn't stop anything, offense couldn't get going, but the offense couldn't get going because the defense wouldn't let it. And then Iowa State, that's your offense pooped the bed there, so didn't do so well. Going into 2022, yeah, we know you got Quinn Ewers, but once again, I think the problem with this Texas team is the defense. Fantastic if you have Ewers and Xavier Worthy lighting it up, passing for 400 yards a game, but if your defense, yet again, cannot get off the field to save its life, you can't get Ewers and Worthy out on the field, and Bijan Robinson. So, the good news for your recruiting, out of your 2021 class, 7 out of 10 of your top players are defensive side. They are on the defensive side of the ball, so that will be good, a good trend for the defense if those guys can develop and produce, but that's an if. As we know, Texas does not lately have a track record of doing that. Not for the past 2 head coaches. I'm going to exclude Sark because he's only had 1 season. We haven't seen his whole tenure, but clearly Charlie Strong and Tom Herman didn't develop guys. Now let's take a quick look at Steve Sarkisian, just over his career as a head coach. I'm going to start in 2009 at Washington when he took the job. I'll go through Washington, then his move to USC, then his move to Texas. We'll just kind of look at his career trajectory, how his offenses and defenses have improved, his recruiting, whatnot, just so we can see if there's any trends, really, maybe to look for in Texas this upcoming year. In year 2, his first season with a real recruiting class under his belt. Real recruiting classes of 15's bad. So, 2009, he takes over Washington, who had just gone. I was just researching. It was Tyrone Willingham, I believe. I think it said 2007. He went 4-9 on Wikipedia. That doesn't make sense to me. 4-9, maybe 4-8. Who knows? But then the next year he went 0-12, fired. Sark comes in, goes 5-7. The offense ranked 70th at the end of the season in his first year. That's an improvement of 47. They were awful the year before, I think like 117. His defense also ranked 70th, and there's a 46th place improvement. So I think they had like 117 and 116, really bad 0-12. The next year, 2010, they are bowl eligible. They go 7-6. The offense regresses to 96th. So that's they going down 26 spots. The defense regressed to 80th, down 10 spots. However, they won 2 more games, and their recruiting went from 74th to 19th. So he took over, had the 74th ranked recruiting class coming off an 0-12 season. Much, much, much better. Like a 55-point jump to 19th. So that was really good in year 1. 2011, 7-6 again. Offense goes up 71 spots, 25th overall. The 2011 defense, however, continued to regress. So that's year 3, and the offense is still regressing to 108. 24th ranked recruiting class. 2012, 7-6 again. The offense regresses 65 spots down to 90th. However, the defense goes up 69 spots to 39th. And then once again, they have the 24th ranked recruiting class. And then 2013 was Sark's big year at Washington. Not really big year, but the year where he kind of, I guess, his coming out party, 9-4. I believe they played in the Pac-12 championship game. Wait, maybe not. No, the math doesn't add up. They didn't. Anyway, so 24th, 36 places of improvement on offense. Their defense went down a little bit. 18th. 72 spots up on offense. 30th on defense. That's still an improvement of 9. So that was, collectively, they jumped up 81 spots across offense and defense. 18th ranked recruiting class. And then after that, he goes to USC. Now, the situation at USC when Sark arrived, that was after Lane Kiffin went 3-2, was fired 5 games in, and Ed Orgeron kind of carried that team to 10-4, I believe. And then Sark arrives in 2014. They go 9-4, 24th on offense overall. They jumped 36 spots, so the year before they were 60th on offense at USC. Their defense took quite a step back, 31 spots, all the way down to 47th. And then he had the 10th ranked recruiting class. So pretty good. USC may not consider 10th like fantastic, but it's still a top 10 class in your first recruiting cycle as a head coach. Then 2015, he went 3-2, was fired 5 games in, and then that was his USC career. Goes to the Nick Saban career rehab for head coaches. Pretty elite offensive coordinator there at Bama. Ends up at Texas in 2021 as the head coach, where their offense finishes 18th. It went 11 spots back from 2020, and the defense was ranked 99th, regressing 38 spots. And that's 15th in the recruiting class, as I said. So, and I will say, the past year on offense, it marks Sark's most productive offense at 18th. Like, the best offense he ever had outside of Texas was 2013 at Washington, and he had the 18th ranked offense nationally. Same thing last year. So he's coming in, he's already matching his best production. I think that kind of goes to show that Texas does have quite a bit of weapons on offense, especially like the running backs. They're always super talented at running back and wide receiver. Didn't quite have it at quarterback last year, but it's not like the offense has been bad. Like Sark's offense this past year, it basically matched his best output nationally. So the thing is, he's kept Pete Kwiatkowski? I think that's how you say it. Pete Kwiatkowski, the defensive coordinator. After such a abysmal year, he did not make any changes in terms of coordinators. So I think that will probably be what determines whether or not Texas is back this year. It's, can Kwiatkowski right the ship on defense? Can they quit being a leaky sieve, giving up 220 on the ground or 200 on the ground every single game on average? So like that's the most important thing for Texas to be back, is they've got to fix the defense. Like, you don't have to have a top 10 defense, but you can't be you can't be like, you need at least top 40. Probably, I would imagine at least top 40 to be back, where Texas is sleepwalking to 10-win games a year every season. So, yeah, that's basically what Texas has to do in 2022. I don't think that's going to happen. And here's why. Everything I just mentioned, like the defense needs a lot of improvement in one season. But that excludes the culture that is in Austin. It's just not a great culture right now. Their athletic department, it's a mess. Last year you had reports that big money donors were basically stipulating, oh, hey, I give all sorts of money. Why don't you play the guys that you want me to play? The media kind of took that and ran with it. It went a certain direction with that. I'm not sure that's exactly what was happening. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know what happened. But either way, the fact that you've got donors saying, hey, I want you to play X, Y, Z players to the coach, that's like having a Jerry Jones, and Texas has multiple. Like look at the Cowboys, how they have not succeeded with Jerry, since the 90s, really. I just don't think that Texas, even though they have tons of money, they're making money. They're the most, they're the most well-endowed athletic program in the nation for college athletics. They're just, I don't see it. Something needs to change in Austin. On top of that, whenever those players lose their first, second game, it's not like you're in Ames, Iowa. Where all there is to do is go to school, play football, maybe party a bit, but it's not Austin. When Texas players lose, they've got dirty sixth. They've got a huge city, much that's blowing up. Basically little California 2.0 in Texas. So there's just so many distractions in the city. It's just not. I don't think it's really an environment that's conducive to consistently winning 10 games. For that to happen, you need to have a coach like Mac Brown, a CEO type coach who's got this, certain mentality. He got a little softer in his later years, but he was able to handle the players. I think the situation's a bit untenable. Maybe Sark, with all his previous problems and learning from his mistakes, can come back and be the guy to lead Texas back. I don't think it's going to be it. It's really not. You gotta, in summation, you gotta fix the culture. You gotta make sure your players leave all those distractions behind. You gotta handle the athletic donors. You gotta corral them, which is a job and skill set in and of itself. Huge difference between, 18 to 22-year-old kids and, grown adults who are billionaires. Huge difference in managing those personalities. And that's before you even get, those are two huge problems before you even get to defense and mental toughness, which is the football aspect of what needs to be fixed. Texas should not be getting their butt whipped on the line, up and down the gridiron by Iowa State's offensive line. It just shouldn't happen. And that's what happened last year. Happened to them about 7 times. So, yeah, Texas, I hate to break it to you, Texas fans, I do not think you're back in 2022. Am I saying Sark is a bad coach? No. Am I saying that there's no hope for Sark or Texas? No. I just don't think it's going to happen next year.